Well, hey there, friend. Happy Wednesday. I hope you are having an amazing start to the week. I know I've been having a really fun start to the week. I was in Jacksonville yesterday for a speaking engagement, and now I'm back in Austin, Texas, with a hot cup of green tea ready to dig in with you. If you haven't already, say hi in the chat and let me know where you're coming in from and perhaps what it is in your cup. A big hello to everyone who's joining from Cincinnati and Pennsylvania and Zurich. Oh, how fun. We love to see that. So happy that you made time in your busy schedule. I know you got a lot going on. Your calendar is jam-packed, and I promise you the next 45 minutes are going to be no different because we are packing in lots of interesting tips, tactics, and topics of conversation. And you might think that you can sit back, relax, and let me and Lorraine do all the talking. And that's true. We could do that because we can talk for hours, and we do because we are friends. But what is more important is if Liz or Giacomo or Ty or Jeff or Aaron or Jamel or Shelby has a question, has a comment, has a tactic, has a tip that works for them, join in the fun and share it with everybody else, because why keep it to yourself? That's not fun. And that's not how we grow. And that's not how we get better. And this is all about coming together over a cup of hot caffeine, preferably caffeine, doesn't have to be, and helping each other make the most out of our careers. One of the things that I think is such a hot topic in careers these days, or at least it's something that I find that I've been talking about to a lot of different founders and different leaders in organizations, is this topic around sort of a split between communications and professionalism. What does that look like? Obviously, we've had a lot of changes in the way that we communicate in the last 4 years, a lot more Teams, a lot more Zoom, a lot more Slack, a lot more DMs or emails, as opposed to in-person meetings, in-person networking, in-person conferences. We've had some adjustments. And likewise, this new level of professionalism. Maybe we all aren't wearing a suit and tie into the office anymore, but what is that new degree of how are we showing up to others? And, a little bit of a contrarian thought on my part that I posted about last week and this week, and it got a lot of hot takes because a lot of people had a lot of supercharged opinions about, is it okay to show up in a t-shirt to a client meeting? Is it okay to, maybe be a little more casual with emojis in your emails? In my book, no. In my book, we've lost a little bit of the plot. We've lost a little bit of the decorum that this is still a professional workplace where we show up as professionals and the professionals that we want to be and want to see in the world. So someone that I know is also kind of constantly digging into this topic, not only in her LinkedIn posts, but in her content that shows up in her courses and just in her, speaking engagements and the consultancy work she does, is my good friend, Lorraine Lee. And you probably have seen her around LinkedIn. If not, now that I have said it out loud, the algorithm in all of its crazy knows that. I'm sure she's going to start coming up on your feed naturally. Wink, wink. We all know the algorithms listen to us all the time. So I'm sure she'll be popping up. But if you haven't done some Google stalking about her already, I highly, highly encourage you to do it. She is an amazing founder, executive. She has a book coming out that hopefully we're going to get to talk about a little bit, and just a LinkedIn learning instructor, a lot of cool things going on. So please, wherever you are in the world, Jamil and Carrie, please help me in raising your glass and welcoming Lorraine to coffee with us.
Hi, so good to see you again.
Good to see you as well. How's it going?
It's great. I've got my tea this morning, and I'm so excited to be back with, I think this is the second time, right? I've been on your show. And so I'm just excited to dig in and to see all the active comments and all your fans tuning in. It's amazing to see.
I love this. And I want to kick it off with this kind of the through thread of this spicy topic, because I did post this spicy comment that I do still feel like we should be wearing collared shirts to like meet clients and like
Yeah.
not sneakers and tucking in our shirts perhaps. And
Mhm.
there were people on both sides of the spectrums. There were
Yeah.
people that were like shaking their fist, like, amen, Kim, like what
Yeah.
happened to professionalism? And then there were people that were like, die are the days of suits and ties. We want to show up in our pajama pants. So obviously you live and breathe this work, executive communications, both virtually and in person. So I'm curious, like, what are you seeing in the space, or what are maybe your takes on it?
So my take is it's always better to play it safe. And to me, playing it safe is dressing a little bit nicer. I mean, no one's ever going to complain that you look nice. People will complain that you didn't show up in the way that they were expecting, or they don't feel respected that you're, in the way that you're dressing. So I like to err on the side of caution, and it's always better to look a little nicer and, you look good, you feel good, all those things. I do think that there is space for us to think about it a little bit differently. So it's not necessarily suits and ties, but there was this really interesting data in Harvard Business Review talking about executive presence and all the things that have changed from 2012 to 2022. And one of the things is that, yes, polished look is still very important in terms of appearance, but a more authentic, maybe style of dressing has gone up in importance. So we see tech CEOs, for example, on stage. They're not necessarily presenting in, a suit and tie, but they still look put together, even if it's a little bit more casual, but it's put together.
Well, and I think so much of it is, again, that put together look. I always tell people, if you are meeting a client for coffee and they know you're going to the airport, okay, you might look another way. But if you're going into a client meeting pitching $150,000 partnership, like, you better look like someone that giving $150,000 to looks like a good decision.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You want
Like,
the other
where
person to feel confident and like just yeah, confident in that, in you and the work that you're going to bring. And it reflects on who you are.
What do you think in terms of outside of just like how we're dressing, but also really how we are presenting ourselves digitally? I see a lot of, I don't want to name any names or demos, but the young people, a lot of emojis, a lot of like run-on sentences, even
Mm,
like grammatically incorrect sentences. Like, I don't know if they're just sending them from their phones or they're on
yeah.
the run, but what is kind of that communications professionalism look like?
Yeah, so I love that you're bringing that up because, we're talking about presence here. And when I talk about presence, I define it in two ways. So the first way is how others see you, right? That's important. More traditionally, like executive presence, like are you charismatic, confident, all these things. But the other side of things is where is your presence and what is the impression that you're leaving during all those touch points, especially digitally, that we have in a given day where we're not necessarily face to face because they might seem like, oh, it's no big deal. I'm just, shooting off an email. But over time, all of these little moments do contribute to your brand and the impression of how someone sees you. So when it comes to email, like, oh gosh, I always get worried with AI and just in terms of uh, diminishing how well people can write because they rely too much on that. But I mean, writing is underrated, but it's such an important skill, right? It's a key to communication. So I think, I mean, spell checking. I think emojis, if you're comfortable with the person, you're kind of getting that energy that they're, a little bit more, maybe more friendly and open to that. I think is fine to use. But if you're coming in strong, you've like just met the person, you're using a ton of exclamations, tons of emojis, probably not the way to go. Again, play it safe to start. And then as you get to know the person, you can kind of assess what makes the most sense.
I love this question from Jeff in terms of, do you have any style guides or recommendations that you give clients that you work with? Or when you're doing these speaking engagements, do you
Yeah.
have kind of hard and fast rules around that?
So when I do speaking engagements, I dress up a little bit more. So I will have the collared blouse, Kim, and the nice pants. I've been thinking about a little bit more. Like I used to wear heels, and I'm like, oh, maybe I'll switch to. I don't know. I haven't gone there yet, but like maybe nice white sneakers. I don't know. I'm not comfortable quite yet. But I'm like thinking about it, but like maybe like flats, and that's okay, right? Because it makes me a little bit more comfortable. On video, I do like to say wear colors that pop. As like Kim and I are both wearing pink, matching unintentionally today, but colors that pop against your background and also that, just make you more memorable, right? If you're kind of in drab colors, it's subconsciously or not an association with you. So brighter colors, jewel tones are the ideal, I think, on camera, and then avoiding colors that match too closely to the wall behind you.
Well, and I think it's also just really about back to your earlier point about like what do you feel good in? I feel like one of the things that I've been seeing like crazy on social media these days are these like color wheels where like are
Mm,
you better in fall colors or are you better in summer colors or like what's your tone? And I think that that's true. Like I've definitely seen the before and afters like oh this person does look better in warmer tones versus cooler tones. But I think a lot of it comes down to if you're not comfortable that everybody can sense it. You can like
yeah,
sniff it from a mile away.
definitely. Yeah. I've never done one
It's
of those. Have you done one of those before, Kim?
I'm actually doing one tomorrow with a group of
Okay.
other female founders here in Austin, and I'm
Oh my
quite
gosh,
excited about
fun.
it.
Okay, you'll have to let me know how it goes because I haven't done one, but I've been like, that could be helpful. I mean, I feel like I know what colors I look good in, but who knows?
I will report back because I mean, we'll see. Like we'll see
Yeah.
if it's something that people are into. Um, I wanted to also touch on that point you made about, the way that we're writing emails and the way that we're structuring based on this comment that Ty made, which is a comment I have always heard numerous times, which is dress for the job you want, not the job you have. And
Yep.
I think so much of it as well as something that I've always modeled, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, is I always look at not even necessarily who I'm emailing with, but let's say it's their boss or my boss. Like, what is their writing style? Like, not only dressing for the job that you want, but
Yeah.
also writing for the job that you want. Because if your boss, two levels up, is not putting like winky emojis
Yeah.
in their email, then like maybe you shouldn't be putting winky emojis in your email.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. I feel like that's a version of mirroring, right? Like when people talk about mirroring body language, I mean, mirroring communication style. I think that's a great strategy. You see they're a little bit more casual. And I have certainly started off, more professional and then gotten more casual, just based on their own communications. They give me a smiley. I'm like, oh, great, this person's using emojis. I'm gonna give a smile right back. So it's like digital mirroring. Yeah.
1,000%. With all of the kind of consultancy work that you do or the organizations that you partner with to help their executive teams, what are some of the biggest kind of fails that you see or the biggest red flags that you kind of walk in going like, "Oh no, this is very bad."
I think it's an interesting trend. So I think one thing I'm seeing that's missing, but I'm happy to see that a lot of people are starting to think more about it, is their personal brand. And I think a lot of people are realizing, okay, there's layoffs happening. Platforms like LinkedIn are just generally getting more popular. How do I become part of this conversation? Make sure that I don't get left behind. And so I find a lot of people bringing me. I just did a talk with Indeed yesterday on personal branding with my friend Jean Kang, and just generally like more executives are coming to me about, how do I improve my LinkedIn presence? So I think, it's not just about LinkedIn when it comes to branding, but I think it's really important that people are starting to think about this. And again, going back to presence, it's not just how others see us, but where others see us. And really those two things come together to build what is essentially our reputation or our career brand. So yeah, I'm happy to see people focusing on that, and I'm seeing a trend and interest in that topic.
Do you think it's the type of situation where people have to kind of brand themselves across many platforms? Like, if someone is sitting there today and they're saying, Lorraine, I have a LinkedIn profile, but like I don't have an Instagram, I don't have a Twitter account. Is your recommendation that that person goes and builds out those accounts? Or is it just sort of like whatever you have, stick to it? Or I guess, how do you navigate for somebody that's listening in and is like, well, Lorraine has everything, but I don't. So what do I actually need?
Sure. Well, I only have LinkedIn. Well, I have light touch Instagram and like I have a Twitter X account, but I'm not active really on it at all. So I think it's about finding the platform that is best for you, right? I just write a lot of professional content, and Instagram might be more suited for people who are a little bit more visual or are in like the art industry, for example, or designers. Not to say LinkedIn can't work for you for that as well, but I think just for me, also having worked at LinkedIn, right? Just that's where I started building my audience and my brand. So for now, that's where I want to stick to. But I experiment. I'm posting a little bit more on Instagram and I think Facebook as well. And then we'll see. Like some people have mentioned TikTok, and I'm like, oh gosh, that feels like a whole. I can't right now. So make it manageable too, right? Like I don't want you to feel pressured that, oh my gosh, to build a great personal brand, I have to be across all the platforms and posting every day. Like you want to make sure that you can stay consistent and not burn out.
And a lot of times I give people advice that probably once a quarter or once every 6 months, as crazy as it sounds, I actually think that you should be Googling your own name because you want to see what other people are seeing. And to this point that Jeff made, that a lot of jobs now are asking for social media handles. And listen, like I talk to people at corporations and it's probably not anything that they're going to declare publicly, but like they don't want to hire a potential lawsuit. They don't want to hire somebody and find out 6 months later, oh, by the way, 3 years ago on Twitter, they said something horrible.
Yeah.
So, a lot of times I tell people like Google yourself so
Yeah.
that you can see what other people are seeing.
Yeah.
And
That's a good
maybe
idea.
that's something as simple as, okay, well, oh, I've had this Twitter account for 10 years, but I don't use it anymore. Maybe it's time to retire that account, or maybe it's time to put it on private, or maybe it's time to delete.
Mhm.
I know there's a software, I'll find the name of it, but there is a software on Twitter where any tweet that's over a year old, it will like auto delete, kind of like cleaning up
Mm.
after you. It's like the Roomba of
Yeah.
social media. Like after a year, it like starts deleting your stuff
Yeah.
because you never know where the world is going to turn. Things that are okay to say today in 5 years might not be okay to say, or things that were a
Right.
joke 10
Yeah.
years ago now in new light look very different. So that's something that I also tell people a lot is like audit your own social media as if you were somebody else.
Yeah, that's a really good call. And maybe in addition to that, I have a Google alert set up on my name. So that's,
Yeah.
not a bad idea too to see what pops up. People, I don't know, writing about you good, or I don't know if there's like a spammy thing, you want to make sure that that gets taken down. So yeah, another thing to think about.
I love this question from Matthew. Lorraine, are there apps or software? I mean, obviously you're pushing out a lot of content on LinkedIn, but maybe obviously you work with a lot of other executives that might be pushing out content on LinkedIn and company profiles or other profiles. Are there apps or softwares that you use that make things easier for you?
Yes, so there's a few. So Buffer is a good one, and I think they have a free version as well. I use Taplio for my LinkedIn posts. I'm not actually sure if they go cross-publish on other channels. I don't think they do, but I use Taplio for LinkedIn, which is great. And then I know AuthorUp is also popular, but that might be LinkedIn specific too. And then I've also used Planoly before, and that does a
Hmm.
good job cross-posting.
What is the difference between Author Up and Topply? Is that what you
Taplio,
said? Yeah,
Taplio, yeah. Uh,
Toplio.
Different things. So I think people really like Authored Up because they show a preview of what the post will look like before you schedule anything. So, for example,
Got it.
LinkedIn will cut off a post after like 2 sentences, so you can kind of see like where the cutoff is, or like how the image shows, or the preview. And
Yeah.
Taplio, I think, has additional. It's great for scheduling, very easy. And then they also have this nice AI feature where well, first of all, you see like all the top posts on LinkedIn from people who are using Taplio, and you can get inspiration from that. And then also they have an AI tool as well to kind of pull from all that data to help you, generate some ideas if you're having trouble.
Oh, that's so cool. Do you use the AI feature a lot?
I don't need to. I kind of experimented with it at one point, but I feel like I have so many ideas. So
Yeah.
maybe one day when I run out, I'll give it a try. But yeah,
You're just like, well, you're like, here we go.
yeah, yeah,
I love that Carrie made this point that would your grandma approve of your post? If not, then remove it. It's
yeah.
such
Good
it's
rule of thumb.
such
Yeah,
a good rule of thumb. It's such a good rule of thumb. Always the grandmas know best every time.
exactly.
So I'm curious, tell us a little bit more about just kind of what you're seeing in your space, what you're seeing within these companies, what you're seeing from executives.
So personal branding was a big one I mentioned before. I, I'm also seeing, in terms of people bringing you in for like trainings or keynotes, an emphasis on learning more about people skills and soft skills, which I'm happy to see
Mm.
because I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of interest in AI as well, but I think what will really differentiate you from another candidate, of course, AI is important to know how to kind of use that to maybe expedite or become more productive for the more manual tasks that you do. But the people skills are really important if you want to advance in a company, right? You're not going to advance just because you know how to use AI, you know, some tips and tricks, but it's really about, do I know how to communicate? Do I know how to influence my stakeholders? Do I know how to manage up? Do I know how to give and receive feedback? These are all really people-centric skills that require relationships. And so, yeah, a few of my, most popular talks this year, last year have been around influence. I launched a new one this year around executive presence and brand building. So those have been really great. And then, even though we've been, a few years post-pandemic, I still see people wanting to learn about video communications and video presence. So I'm happy to see that. Sometimes people are like, "We all know how to do it now. Like it's been a few years." I'm like, "No, there's if you're in the meetings that I'm in, there's still room for improvement." So it's an important skill, right? So that's maybe more of a hard skill, but yeah, video communications generally is important as well.
I love this idea for someone that's kind of digging into their presence and their executive presence. Do you give differing advice between if a young person or somebody early in their career is kind of digging into what this looks like versus someone who is maybe 15, 20, 25, 30 years into their career? Do you
Yeah.
give them separate advice? Do you give them the same advice?
I typically give the same advice. It's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting that you asked that because I feel like the things I teach there's still, everyone still has something to learn or gain something from my talks. I would say for early career folks, I think there needs to be a little bit more emphasis on the relationship building piece just because all of us who have had the benefit of being in office and kind of networking and talking to coworkers, we can take that with us even though we're fully virtual or partially virtual now. I really like to work with younger groups as well, early career people, because if they learn some of these critical skills, it just takes them so much farther, and it can be such a catalyst to growing their career much more quickly and really impressing their managers and senior leaders.
Yeah, I definitely think it's something that, you're never done growing, you're never done learning, you're never done figuring things out. I think people early on in their career, to your point with those soft skills, maybe they've missed a lot of the in-person stuff.
Yeah,
So they need to learn to stand up when somebody enters the room, to shake a client's hand, not give like a, hey, dude,
yeah,
what? No, we're
yeah,
not hey duding people in meetings.
yeah,
Like we're standing up. Hi,
yeah, yeah,
my name's Eric Schwartz. It's nice to meet you. Like, those soft skills I think for kind of early in your career are so important. But then to your point on the flip side, for somebody who has been in person and in office for the last 15, 20 years, video might be
yeah,
something that they start to grow
exactly.
in because all of a sudden they're working at a company where their headquarters might be in London or the United States, but they have offices in Tokyo. They have offices in Australia. As we become more globalized and you have these team leaders or people that are all over the place, maybe you need to lean a little bit heavier into the digital side of
Yeah,
communication. So I totally
exactly.
agree. I think wherever you are in the spectrum, there's always something that you could be learning about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well said.
I'm curious because obviously you and I are not the only ones in this conversation right now. So I would love to ask everybody who's here live. And if you're not here live and you're listening to this in podcast form later while you're washing the dishes or running around doing errands, then you can just nod silently to yourself. But I'm curious, for everybody who's with us today, do you think that professionalism is where it should be? You can just answer like, yes, I think that everybody that I interact with is doing a great job at professionalism. Like, I'm seeing really strong strides being made, or you can just answer no. Like, I'm seeing people in flip flops, or, you don't have to give reasoning, but just a yes or a no. I'm just so curious because I wonder sometimes, like, are Lorraine and I biased because we see it so much because we work in it so
Yeah.
much? So
Yeah.
I'm just curious if other people are like, yes, I think everybody's professionalism is doing great, or no, uh, not exactly where it should be.
Opening up an opportunity for more feisty conversation. Yeah.
I know. I'm just curious because sometimes I've been very aware lately of, am I in a bubble? Like, am I in a
Yeah.
bubble? Like, am I getting in this bubble of like everybody around me thinks the same? Or like, are we actually all just experiencing the same thing?
Yeah.
Um,
I think you and I too can we do a lot of public facing things. So having that professionalism, I think, is also just very integral to what we do, right?
Yeah, no, a 1000%. Aaron's like, no, professionalism is definitely not where it should be, especially on the entry level team. I'm glad that Chris brought this up about like the vernacular, like people being like, dude, hey, bro,
Oh
what's going
gosh,
on?
I can't even imagine me using any of that language.
Yeah, no, I love Viola's like, a mixture of, you know, good and bad. And I love this point from Gil of just like, you're close, but you're not quite there on the totally together front. Kind
Yeah.
of close, but no cigar. Oh, I love this point from Matthew. Do you think that your network should reflect your brand on a professional level, or does it matter? Hmm.
I think I think if you I think you are who you surround yourself with, right? So I think your network is a reflection of you. And sort of similarly, as I think about that, I talk often about social proof on LinkedIn and
Mm.
using LinkedIn recommendations for that. So I feel like those things tie in. Whoever's in your network, those are the people you're going to be asking for recommendations. And if I am looking to hire you or work with you in some way, I'm going to look at who's leaving you the recommendations. Who is this person? Is this someone who you worked with? Is this like a friend? So you wanted to make sure that it's professional and yeah, and again, you are who you surround yourself with, so that it's reflecting you as well in a positive way.
Let's dig into this for anybody who's with us or listening who's like, I don't know what a LinkedIn recommendation is. Can you
Sure.
just kind of go over what that is,
Yeah.
why it's important,
Yeah.
and how you should be best utilizing and leveraging this?
Yeah, definitely. So, all of you just, go on your LinkedIn page now and you'll scroll down. It's quite close to the bottom and it's a recommendation section. And so I always like to describe this section as Yelp for professionals because, before we go to try a new restaurant or new spot, we're gonna go on Yelp and check out the reviews and ratings. And similarly, if I'm trying to learn more about you, or let's say we have two candidates who are pretty identical, but one has 10 recommendations and one has zero, you're gonna feel a little bit more positively and comfortable, right? Maybe reaching out or interviewing that candidate with the 10 recommendations. So they're essentially a way to get to publicly show people advocating for you, talking about their work with you, what you do well, and hopefully, recommending you for future opportunities and saying, this is a great person to work with, definitely recommend that you bring them onto your team. So they can be as long or as short as you want, but I think they are a very important indicator in terms of um, just your past collaborations and just what you're like as an employee or as a professional.
And do you ask people for these?
I have over 100 now, Kim. I ask for a lot, especially always after speaking events. I didn't used to do it, and so I have, people who I intern with, when I was an intern, through my professional experience, and then especially now that I do speaking and consulting, I ask a lot. Excuse me. So, in my feedback form after a session, I'll say, leave your name and LinkedIn if you are open to writing me a recommendation. I definitely always ask, the event organizers. So it's just a nice way. Again, that's social proof. No one is reading through, hopefully, no one is reading through the 100 testimonials, but the fact that I have them, it's just a very, it just clicks right away. Oh, people seem to like working with Lorraine. So let me talk to her or I feel more confident maybe collaborating.
Do you have a template or something that you use? Because what if you're emailing like somebody after a speaking gig and they're like, what the heck is she talking about? I've never given a LinkedIn recommendation before. Like, do you have a template that you kind of cut and paste and use every time?
Yeah, so, the thing about feedback, maybe it's, tangentially, topic. The thing about feedback is you wanna be really specific with it. So I don't just ask, "Hey, can you give me feedback about the event?" I'll say I have a
Yeah.
template and I'm saying, "Hey, like, what was the company? What was the talk? Like, did you find the session valuable? Was it a good use of your time? How was I as a speaker? Was I engaging? Was I warm, friendly, helpful?" All these things, and so, they don't have to answer every single thing, but it's just helpful to give them prompts because, again, like, same in a corporate environment, if you ask someone for feedback, it's like, "How was my presentation?" Or how was I leading the meeting?" It's just, wow, I can say so many things about it. So you want to keep people focused, and depending on the types of goals that you have, uh, kind of target the recommendation or the feedback so that it helps you get closer to that goal or helps give you that social proof to impress people when it comes to reaching that goal.
Now, do you write these for other people before you ask for them yourself, or what's the etiquette there?
I will usually ask,
Okay.
first, and then when it comes to speaking, they don't really ask for recommendations back, but, in my corporate days, I would usually offer. I'm like, "Oh, I'm happy to write one for you as well if you'd like." And I remember getting this question once and people and maybe I think someone just posted a question about this, "D does it seem disingenuous that you're both, just writing nice things to each other? Like, is it just kind of like, pat your back?" You know, but I like to say that I think when both of you can write a recommendation for each other, it shows that you had a really good working relationship, and I think that's a great thing. I don't think you have to write a recommendation for someone else just because they write one for you, but I think it's a nice gesture.
And when you're asking, I love this question from Aaron, how do you give recommendations? Is it something just as simple as sending a note on LinkedIn, or is it a formal email that you're sending? Like, how formal should this kind of ask and give conversation be?
It's usually not too formal because I've worked with them before, or I've, just completed an event with them, for example. So I'll send them an email and just ask if they're open to it. And then when you send the request, you'll see in the recommendation section, you actually send them the request directly through a message, and then there's a link that they click so that it uh, like gets sent to the recommendation section, and then you can toggle it on or off whether you want to show it or not.
I love that. Okay, cool. I feel like we all learned something a little new today. That's so fun. Um, And then in terms of kind of what you're seeing in the broader landscape, so like as you kind of close out 2024, looking into 2025, where do you see the biggest opportunities or where do you see space for people to continue to grow and continue to get better?
Presence, I don't know the cop out answer, but I feel like presence is so key because and I think the thing with presence is it's going to take a lot more intentionality. Now that many of us are virtual or we're hybrid, there's just so much noise in our world, right? There's just so much going
Yeah.
on. There's messages coming from, left, right, and center, all these different channels, in person, virtual. And so I think there's just so much opportunity to really, I like to say, just be the CEO of your own career, right? And to be really intentional about the presence and the brand that you're creating for yourself. It's not just, I'm going to show up to work and do a good job, but there's just so many other pieces to start thinking about as well to make sure that you are really seen, that you're being valued, right? And that you're just leaving the best impression possible and being a great coworker or colleague.
1,000%. I mean, obviously, you gave us some of these applications and software programs that you're using, but are there any others that you use on a day to day basis or on a monthly basis that you kind of absolutely love, absolutely swear by? They could be video tools, could be note taking tools, could be any type of tools, but are there any kind of apps or software that you really love?
So I well, not recently, but earlier this year, I started using Notion. And oh my gosh, such a game changer for my solopreneur life. It's been really wonderful. I didn't even realize how many things you could automate, but it's been super helpful. I have a team of part-time virtual assistants. So just being really clear on who's doing what and when things are due and when I have to review things, we change the status and it goes to my like Notion inbox or task list. That's been super helpful for me this year.
Yeah, I'm a huge Notion fan. I'm sort of obsessed with it. It's one of those things that Shelby and I, maybe like, I don't know, a year ago now or a year and a half ago, I got really into, what are we doing? How can we make this better? How can we really improve? And Notion was something that a friend had recommended. And with Notion, before that, we had tried like Monday.com, we had
I've heard that.
tried ClickUp, we had
Mhm.
tried all of these different programs, but Notion was really the one that stuck that we loved so much. We were like obsessed with all things Notion. And it looks like Rachel and Jeff and everybody is like, yes, Notion. So I'm not the only one that is loving the Notion brand.
Yeah, it's
Um,
amazing.
I love this question from Hillary as well. I come from the service industry with very few coworkers on LinkedIn. How do I give employers that same confidence? I think maybe this is a question around those recommendations if you don't have a lot of people that are on LinkedIn.
I think there are other ways that you can do it. So Kim and I are posting content often on LinkedIn. So posting content is a great way, I think, to build your credibility and show your expertise, right? When an employer goes to your page, they're not just going to see the recommendations, they're going to see your whole page holistically. So content is a great way to do it. And then if you don't feel comfortable posting your own content, I always like to say comment on other people's posts. So comment on Kim's post or my post, or whoever in your industry who's talking about something that's relevant. And that's a really great way also to still build kind of that thought leadership expertise, and then meet some really interesting people just through the comments.
1,000%. I feel like social media should be just that, social. So the more social you can get in terms of comments or connecting, the better. And in terms of commenting and connecting, Giacomo was asking, do you have some favorite podcasts or books that can have insight or advice in regards to these topics that you cover?
Yes. So definitely, obviously, Kim's. And then I was recently on the Career Contessa podcast, which is quite popular, and tons of really great content and topics on there. So I would say, yeah, that one in terms of podcasts, and then maybe just in terms of following, certain people on LinkedIn when it comes to personal branding. Kim talks about it. I talk about it. My friend Jean, right? I mentioned we just did the Indeed podcast or LinkedIn Live together. So would encourage you to check that out as well. We shared a lot of good nuggets there.
1,000%. And I think just as much as you can, it's something that I harp on constantly, as you guys know, who come every single week, is copy other people's homework. Like, don't reinvent the wheel. Don't make things harder for yourself. It's life is already hard enough. Online presence is already hard enough. Picking your outfit, structuring your email, organizing your LinkedIn, figuring out what social media channels to use, like that's already hard enough. You already have a full plate. So, as much as possible, just look and see what other people are doing and
Yeah.
copy them as much as possible. I know that Rachel mentioned it earlier, but both Lorraine and I have a ton of LinkedIn nano courses as well. Nano courses are like 10 minutes or less, quick, bite sized ways to copy our homework. So, as
Mhm.
much as you can with those as well, just copy somebody else's homework. Don't reinvent the wheel. Don't feel like you have to figure it out yourself.
Exactly.
1,000%. Oh, thank you, Jeff, for tossing in the Career Contessa podcast link. Also, if you're listening to this later on, we will put this in the show notes so that you can catch that episode with Lorraine. So perfect. And so I'm curious, Lorraine, like to wrap
Yeah.
it up, if you could give us all homework for the week, something that we should do, something that we should try, something that we
Oh,
should download, what would be your homework assignment for us when it comes to our online presence, our in-person presence, our executive presence, our professionalism? What's a great homework assignment for us?
gosh, so many things that we can do. I would say Maybe two things. So the first thing I would say is I encourage you all to leave a comment on someone's post because, uh, again, I know a lot of people get very intimidated, very nervous posting on LinkedIn, but you will be amazed if you can stay consistent with the commenting and really add value in your comments. You're going to meet so many amazing people and just really expand your network in ways that you couldn't even have imagined for yourself. I have met so many of some of my biggest supporters, friends, literally through LinkedIn. And we've been able to, some of us meet in person, but it's been a huge game changer to my career. So encourage you all to do that. And then if you're looking for more advice on how to sort of optimize your LinkedIn presence or profile, I have an ebook, and then I offer the first part for free, which is based around the profile. So if you go to lorrainekaylee.com/LinkedIn-guide, you can get access to that and check that out. And I hope you'll make some quick changes to your profile based on what I share there.
I love it. I will double down on the homework advice to connect with people on LinkedIn to really leverage and utilize the platform because you just have so many smart, talented people, not to brag, on this platform, some of whom, most of whom, let's be honest, everybody who comes here every single week at 1 p.m. Eastern is part of that subset. So I know that Lorraine and I so enjoyed having you here with us. And we're really excited because, again, we know you're busy. Thank you for taking the time because you got a lot going on. If you would like to continue to join us here, which I'm biased, I think you should because I think it's really helpful. And I think you have a lot of good information as well. You can head over to getcoffeewithkim.com and I will magically, through the power of the internet, send you a calendar invite so that you can have it on your calendar so that when somebody tries to schedule a call or an appointment with you, you can be like, my friend, I am busy. If you're joining from another time zone and you cannot join us live, that's okay. You can listen on your favorite podcast network, whether that is Spotify, whether that is Apple Podcasts, and you can always DM me or email me and send me in any questions or comments because I will be sure to save them up for you so that I'm not the one asking all the questions because that is selfish. And even though I'm an only child, I really try to resist the urge to do everything that I want to do. Try to be a good sharer. So thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate it. We are taking a break next Wednesday. I have a board meeting, so I am not able to join in with you guys, but we'll be back the following Wednesday. After that, 1 p.m. Eastern. So look forward to seeing you. Please give a follow and a shout out to Lorraine. So awesome to see you guys again and have a wonderful week. Bye.